To start the tutorial off, I'm just going to list off the weapons and gear you're going to want before you start your speedrun. So you're going to want the M93R handgun, a rocket launcher, grenades, flash being the most important grenade. You're going to want a grenade launcher with flash rounds and nitrogen rounds, first aid sprays for heals. You're going to want a melee vest and bulletproof vest so you take less damage and have to heal less. Infinite ammo for your handgun and rocket launcher, and you're also going to want Safari or Warrior Chris costume equipped to Chris so he can't be stunned by flash grenades. All of this gear will be unlocked after beating the game and fully upgrading all weapons, so unfortunately you're going to have to grind a little bit in order to get the inventory you need for the speedrun. But with that out of the way, let's start the tutorial. I'm going to be fast forwarding some parts that I feel like are just very straightforward and don't really need an explanation. Just try to take good clean lines through these areas and boost if you can. Not really going to get into boosting, but there's a guide on boosting on speedruns.com right now. Something important before I get too far into this, all of these strats are performed with Chris hosting the game, not Sheva, so if your Sheva is hosting, they might not actually work the same way for you. This part here, just make sure you're equipping a weapon or grenade as soon as possible. So coming up, you're going to see your first example of Chris kicking Sheva through a door. This actually doesn't save a lot of time through the entirety of the speedrun. And I don't really want to talk about it too much in this video because I would say it's more of an advanced strat. I plan on making a guide, another guide on speedruns.com about how this is done and where you can do it at. And if someone happens to get grabbed by the guy in front, as long as one player runs to the door as fast as possible, jumps out the window and hits the cutscene over to the left, you actually won't be losing much time. So the gate coming up, that's just outside this building, is the biggest possible time loss in Chapter 1-1. I look at it as a two-part setup to getting the Executioner to hit the gate down. First, you need to get him to walk more quickly than he usually does, and secondly, you need to get him to swing more quickly than he usually does. And there's a setup that we do to make that happen every time, and I'm going to do my best to explain it here. So Chris is going to freeze the enemies that you see coming from the left with nitrogen rounds as soon as they get to the edge of where the gate is. And keeping this done while going into the Executioner cutscene will force the Executioner to swing more quickly. If Sheva stands in this corner here while Chris shoots a nitrogen round towards her and the enemies, it'll both stun her and keep the enemies frozen, and stunning Sheva here is what actually will cause the Executioner to walk faster. Just make sure Sheva is stunned mid-cutscene. And run to the gate as soon as the Executioner hits it down, because it starts the timer for the auto scroll at the end of Chapter 1-1. So here, Chris is going to be shooting a rocket. That's going to break a lock on the other side of the map that we're in right now. And breaking this lock allows you to run through this gate. And if this lock isn't broken on this gate, you have to deviate around to the left. And breaking this lock probably saves 5 to 6 seconds, so it's definitely worth it. For this part, have one player go pick up the key that's in the room by the furnace, and have another player wait outside by the door that the key is placed into, and this will skip the run back that's necessary to usually spawn Ouroboros. Then just kill the boss with a rocket, and then beat Chapter 1-2. So this part here, we're just taking turns shooting tripwires to try to get to the ladder that's coming up as soon as possible. Shooting a rocket at this part of the upside down car kills the two enemies that are between the two cars, and this opens up the fastest possible path to the gate. So the time frame for Sheva to slip past a truck on the left like this is actually pretty small. If Chris jumps right behind Sheva on the jump over, Sheva gets a little boost forward, and this helps with the timing. Skipping the truck like this saves probably about 2 to 3 seconds. Just make sure Chris is also shooting the truck as you're performing the strat. So here, Chris is shooting a rocket into the building as I'm shooting the lock off the door. His rocket is knocking a key off of one of our fallen comrades, unfortunately. But after we pick up this key, he uses it to unlock the door, and then we continue through the checkpoint, hopefully avoiding the arrows shot by the enemies later. Forgot to mention this in the intro, but Chris is actually going to need the Gatling gun for the strat that we're about to perform here. As Chris is making his way to the door with the Gatling gun, I shoot a rocket on the stairs, and this clears his path, so he doesn't have to worry about any enemies. You're not going to really see his positioning from my POV, but all you really have to do is stand center door, look at the door with the Gatling gun, aim it, and then shoot about where the lock is placed on the opposite side of the door, and the lock will break, allowing you to go right through the door.
Sheva, you know where the mines are?
Past the station. Not too far from here. Follow me.
So Sheva is waiting to shoot the wire until Chris reaches a certain point so the dogs spawn. It's actually really difficult to hit the dogs with the wire and not stun Chris if Chris does not stop to shoot with you. So if you're doing a full game run or just starting out, I suggest having Chris have his pistol equipped here and shoot the wire with you. And with the next two tripwires, if Chris stops and shoot them, you will be losing a little time, but if your Sheva can't manage to hit the wires in time as Chris is approaching them, it is better to have Chris stop and shoot them with Sheva. Chris damaging himself like this, I would consider a individual level strat only. It only saves a half a second, so I don't suggest doing it in full game runs. This lantern we're running over now, not picking it up only saves like maybe a second. So if you're uncomfortable running through this entire area blind, and it's very black, it is a very blind run if you don't pick up the lantern. You should probably pick up the lantern, but with a lot of experience, the lines taken through these areas becomes muscle memory, so you won't need the lantern after enough practice here. The enemies in these tunnels generally won't hit you unless you run straight at them, so just avoid running straight at them and you should be fine. Flashing the enemies that are hiding around this bend so they don't attack me and Chris. So if Sheva releases the crank, turns around, and makes it to the ladder before Chris is about 2 seconds past the gate she's cranking, she's able to start climbing a ladder before the cutscene, and if you don't get on this ladder before the cutscene, you have to watch the entire cutscene before you climb the ladder. So this allows Sheva to kill more enemies later on in this specific checkpoint, so Chris has less to worry about as he's catching up. As Chris is running to the next checkpoint, I'm just killing enemies for him, so he has a cleaner line and is less likely to get hit by enemies. Me and Chris are both going to shoot a rocket before the cutscene happens that spawns the boss. The rockets will carry through the cutscene and hit the boss. Chris's rocket is much harder to shoot than Sheva's, so really focus on Sheva's rocket hitting because she's standing still and has a fixed viewpoint to aim at while shooting the rocket. I'm going to skip through quite a bit of the beginning of this chapter just to make sure you're protecting yourself from the enemies and hitting the QTEs, because missing a QTE will actually lose you time in the beginning part of this chapter. Kill this truck as fast as possible because you can't continue getting through the area until the truck is destroyed. Killing the truck this fast is only possible on Xbox One and PS4, so if you're not killing it as fast as I did in this video, don't get discouraged. I'm not going to be using the ogre fight in this video to explain how to kill this boss quickly. This boss is very RNG dependent, so using this video to explain how it should be done won't exactly work. Make sure you're putting damage down on the ogre at all times. The only time he has invincibility frames is while he's recovering from you shooting the plaga on his back, the main plaga on his back, not the arm plagas. While the arm plagas are out, make sure to be shooting them instead of him. And make sure you're shooting barrels to stop the ogre from picking up rocks and grabbing telephone poles and anything else that is a cutscene and might waste time. It is possible to kill this boss in one cycle, which is about 50 seconds faster than killing it in two. It's very hard to do on PC, impossible on some consoles, and somewhat easy on others. I'm not going to explain how to do it because I don't have a lot of experience doing it myself, and is not necessary yet at the moment to get a world record in co-op. Not going to talk about driving too much, just try to take straight lines through areas that you need to drive through. I'm not going to fast forward the driving parts too much so you can see the lines that I take. And maintaining full throttle through these turns is pretty difficult. I don't even try to do it myself, so don't be afraid to let off the throttle and go a little slow on the turns. Here, Chev was just killing a couple enemies for me that have a possibility to block my path on the way back to the boat.
How could someone do this to them?
The faster Sheva kills the guy in this tower, the faster this gate will drop. Shooting him with a pistol can be difficult, but it is the fastest way to do it. If you would like, you can use a rocket, although it's a little slower. If either of these first two alligators stands in Chris's way, make sure both Chris and Sheva are shooting them, but sometimes they will spawn in a spot where you can run right by them, so if that happens, just run by them and have Sheva kill them. If Sheva stands where the second croc was killed, another one won't spawn, so she should stand there until Chris jumps back down the ladder he climbed up. One last croc will always spawn before you reach the ramp that leads to the boat, so be ready for that when you get there. There's a lot of enemies in this little section coming up. On amateur, it's possible to run by all of them, although on higher difficulties this will more than likely not work. I suggest throwing one hand grenade as you approach the jump over, and have either Chris or Sheva shoot a rocket at the enemies that are just outside the little gate. Whoever's in front is going to run to where the bridge ends up being cranked up and shoot a rocket towards the path to the crank so the other player can have a clean line to the crank and start cranking immediately. And after this bridge is up, just have the player that is running across it go unlock the door for the player up top, kick the door, and then finish the chapter. Chris shoots one archer in this tower here. Runs to the crank and then shoots another archer as I run to the raft, and while I'm doing this he's protecting himself with rockets. You can tactical reset this raft checkpoint if you would like to do this area without any enemies, but you lose 2 seconds because you're required to jump back down on the raft after getting the checkpoint. If you choose to do this without the time loss, just make sure Sheva's protecting Chris as she gets cranked across the water. Shooting 2 archers that can be annoying later in this checkpoint. The valve Chris is turning just up the ladder is the first of 3 in this area. Running into the flames early gives Sheva about 2 seconds of iframes, allowing her to get to the ladder quicker. Chris and Sheva basically do the same thing, just on different parts of the map here. Pull the lever, protect yourself, ride the zipline, and then turn the valve down by where you end up after riding the zipline. After both players turn both valves and make sure both valves are turned, Sheva shoots a rocket down to her left, killing the chainsaw guy and giving a checkpoint to both players. Chris and Sheva shooting rockets here kills all the enemies in the room, and this starts the first dialogue sequence for Josh. The faster you kill the enemies after hearing this Josh dialogue, the quicker you'll get the next Josh dialogue, allowing you to use the elevator and leave. Sheva shooting rockets through this window, and Chris shooting rockets behind Josh just above the fence is the fastest way to kill all the enemies in this area. Chris is clearing a route for Sheva to guide Josh through this area here. During this cutscene, Josh continues to put codes into the door to unlock it, so watching it saves time. Killing these enemies as fast as possible may also help doing this part more quickly. As Sheva runs to the checkpoint, Chris places 3 mines. Enemies run over the first mine, blowing the lock off the door so you don't have to shoot it, and the next 2 mines make it so you can shoot 1 tripwire and they both blow up, making this part much faster. Kill both enemies on either side of the jump over so they don't affect Chris's movement.
See what you two can do to get it open.
Sometimes Sheva may have to pick up gold for Chris so he doesn't have to stop and do it on his way back to the boat. Two enemies jump down from different ledges after Chris pulls the lever, and Sheva's going to want to kill these so they don't affect Chris's movement on the run back to the boat. Chris and Sheva going two different routes here is the fastest way to do this area. Whoever takes the shorter path is going to want to shoot a rocket between the two turrets on the wall. Just try to shoot towards the center and it will work, just don't shoot it through the window. Start shooting here when you hear the word what and the phrase what the hell.
We'll try to stop it.
If you do the first part pretty fast, you should be trying to shoot your second rocket when you hear the word try. The rocket that kills Irving is quite a bit more difficult and precise. It may take some practice to get consistent at. Shooting a flash round here is the easiest way to kill all the spider-like enemies. As Sheva's running to regroup with Chris, Chris is just killing some enemies that have a chance to get in our way on the run back. After Chris shoots a rocket at the top of the pillar here, Sheva places a mine on the steps in that very specific spot, and this will kill all the enemies that are following us up to this big lever in the middle of the room. The mine doesn't always kill enough enemies, so it's possible Sheva will have to throw a flash if not enough enemies are dead here. These balls aren't always as cooperative as you see here. Sometimes they go wherever they want to go, and if that happens, you're kind of just screwed.
Come on!
The trick for getting past these enemies without killing them is for Chris to give Sheva about 2 steps of a lead. Real easy boss fight. One player can kill the boss with a headshot from a rocket. If both players shoot a rocket, he almost always dies on amateur difficulty. I don't have Sheva's POV for the first half of chapter 4-2, so I'm going to try my best to explain what she's doing as Chris's POV is playing. Just after turning the corner, after running down a couple steps, Sheva's going to want to go into the open area to her right, run up a couple steps to your left, and hide in one of the cubby holes that are on the left, hide in the one that's right after where you see a small lit fire. And lastly, for the first checkpoint, after you run up the slightly larger set of steps to your right, wait for two lasers to go by, one from the left and one from the right, and then run to your left until you hit the checkpoint. Make sure the key is picked up before the checkpoint is hit, because if not, you won't carry it on to the next checkpoint. Sheva's route's pretty straightforward here. Sheva's running to the farthest left area you can see on the minimap up in the top right. Here she's grabbing the last key to the door. I do have both POVs for the rest of this chapter. Just gonna stay quiet here and let each POV do the explaining.
Okay. 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 Okay.
If you bring a grenade launcher with you for this checkpoint here, hitting both of these lickers with a nitrogen round from the grenade launcher will keep them stunned as Chris is opening the door. It is the safest way to go through this section with the two lickers. Going through the glass like this is quite a bit faster than going around and using the door. It's not even that risky because the lickers won't do much damage, and the stun animation from getting hit by a licker, if it hits you, does not take much time to recover from. Make sure to watch this cutscene. The IGT stops while it's playing, and the elevator will continue to rise. Shooting this boss in the face with a rocket ends chapter 5-1. Because of the large number of enemies shooting at you and throwing grenades at you, this chapter is, I would say, one of the hardest chapters in the game for co-op. Once you get out here in this open area, I suggest the player on the left, which should be Chris, should rocket the enemies that spawn on the left once you get by the door at the end of the room.
Come on!
This rocket didn't actually kill the guy I wanted it to in this speedrun. It was supposed to kill the enemy with the gun you see on the right. This enemy has a high chance of beaming Chris as he runs up the stairs. Shooting the red explosive barrels at the back of the room kills the large group of enemies that are at the back of the room. There's a lot of enemies in this room here, and there is a strat/glitch that stops them from spawning. It involves killing the two guys below you with rockets. I'm going to play a clip of that being done. If you decide not to shoot those rockets, just do your best to avoid getting shot by guns. There's a guy blocking the door to the left here. I like quit shooting a rocket to kill him. It's possible for the enemy above to throw the grenade much earlier than he does here in this video. If that happens, if you stun yourself with a nitrogen round from the grenade launcher right before it explodes, you'll avoid taking damage. If these enemies spawn late, try shooting the box where the lever is positioned in order to kill them while they're on the stairs. If they spawn early, you can also use a rocket or use a red barrel on the conveyor belt. Besides the guy in the beginning randomly throwing the grenade early, or this group of enemies in the back spawning at different times, the rest of this checkpoint is pretty consistent, so just only worry about these two little areas here. There's plenty of room to run by the Reaper on the left here. Just make sure the player up front stutter steps a little bit before approaching where the Reaper spawns so they don't get stunned. Killing this boss with a rocket ends chapter 5-2. Shooting this rocket here kills a large group of enemies that can be annoying if left alive. If a Reaper spawns here, kill it immediately. Sheva can easily run past this Reaper on the left, so after she gets past it, have the Chris player kill it. Unless you have a lot of experience how to deal with this last Reaper while in that small room as Sheva, it's way better to kill it and not take a death here. Have Chris stand by this lever here as Sheva's hitting the lever in the room if you want to get the double cutscene like this. It's possible to pull the lever for these platforms while your partner's running onto it early. and it doesn't even fully stop at where it's going. It reverses direction and starts to bring your partner to where they need to go. If you do this correctly, each time you're allowed to do it, you'll save at least 4 to 5 seconds. As I'm making this run here, Shadow's shooting rockets through the window, trying to kill enemies. After opening this door, I hold it open as Sheva catches up and kill enemies, so we can just run cleanly through the room once she does catch up. The first of 2 enemies that are going to try to slow you down here is going to come from where the arrow is on your mini-map at the top right corner of your screen.
Roger.
The second enemy trying to slow you down is going to be on the complete opposite side of the room from where the first one was. Kill the enemies that are going to spawn on the walkway above to make sure they don't shoot you while you're running to the end of the checkpoint. These 2 lickers will try to attack Sheva after Chris gets past them, so have Sheva be aware of that. And just have Sheva kill lickers for Chris so he doesn't get attacked here for the rest of this checkpoint. Shoot a rocket just off to Wesker's left here to start this fight off. Then run 2 steps forward, turn around, and shoot another rocket about 5 feet above where Wesker is on the wall. After this rocket, run 2 steps forward again, and then turn around. As Chris is turning around, Shev is shooting Wesker to his knees. The easiest way to do this is while Wesker is doing a spin kick, which is an attack he does when you're behind him. As the Chris player, as soon as you see Wesker go to his knees, shoot 1 more rocket on the ground, and this will end the Wesker fight. The weapon you see me holding right now is the best weapon for this. Just make sure the firepower isn't upgraded at all. The flash Sheva just shot there stops us from having to chase Jill down to the middle of the room. The goal here is to shoot the metal piece on Jill's chest 7 times and then pull it off. After the 7th shot, make sure Jill's flashed, and also try to pick a pace you're comfortable with as Chris while you're shooting the metal piece, because it can be pretty bad if you start to miss shots. You're going to want to use the Magnum because of armor penetration here to kill the enemies.
Do you think they're planning to use it to spread Ura
Shooting this guy with a Magnum makes it so you can't get hit in the back while you're shooting the guy above the ladder for Chris. The strat involving the longbow on my back and me climbing up this ladder only saves about 2 seconds, so it's not really that big of a deal, although I'm still going to explain it here. Run to the same spot you see Sheva standing here with your sniper out. You're going to want to aim at the corner of a container down on the ground, and then switch to your longbow and start firing arrows. And with a little bit of luck, you'll hit the green button down by where Chris is, and this stops him from having to shoot it, and he avoids the cutscene this way. The rocket you see Chris shooting now kills an enemy that's operating the crane above. This stops him from dropping a cage on Sheva. The cage wastes about 1 to 2 minutes, so this is a really important strat. I believe the strat's only possible on console, but Chris can knife the button while standing on the lift. And this makes it so both players can get in the lift that's closer, and this saves at least 8 seconds. There should only be one enemy here that's kind of an issue through this run right here. As long as the person who's making the run is on the left when the cutscene first starts and then cuts to the right, the enemy will get baited into attack to the left. You'll make it by every time. After Chris kills this mini boss with a rocket, he goes and picks up the key card that he drops, and Shev is making her way to a lockbox up the stairs to grab another key that's necessary to open the door in the room, and then Chris will be standing at the door as Sheva picks up this key, giving you a checkpoint you can tack reset to save time. If you jump down the ladder quickly and then run against this dumpster-like object in front of us here, the rockets won't hit or stun you. The sharper of an angle you're running against the dumpster, the less likely you are to get stunned by a rocket.
Persistent son of a bitch.
Sheva shooting this rocket kills a tentacle in the hallway to our left that's blocking our path. Chris shooting this rocket kills another tentacle in the hallway that's also on the left now, that's blocking our path. And Chris shooting this rocket here stuns Sheva while she's directly under the tentacle, and this makes it so she can't get hurt by it after she stands up. Sheva shooting these two rockets here is both killing the tentacle and killing an enemy in the back that has a key that you need to get through this room. Some of those rockets are very difficult, the first being the most difficult and a very difficult rocket. If you're not hitting all these your first attempts, don't feel bad. For this boss, Chris is going to quick shot a rocket in front of him to kill the tentacle in front of him, and Sheva is going to be quick shooting a rocket to the right. If off host can get a rocket to explode on the boss as the cutscene is happening that shows the boss's weak spot, the boss will just instantly die. Here Shev is just killing a few enemies for Chris so he doesn't have to worry about them as he's making his run to the lever to open the bulkhead door. Make sure to watch this cutscene. IGT will stop flowing, but the gate will continue to open, so you will save time. After the cutscene, just protect yourself from the enemies as you're waiting for the bulkhead door to open. Towards the end of the first bulkhead door opening, a group of enemies spawns by the second bulkhead door. Just make sure you're having one player kill these enemies as the other player is protecting that player, or they're going to get in your way while you make the run. You're going to want to watch this cutscene for the same reason you watched the other cutscene. Chris is going to start shooting rockets here in the attempt to get a rocket to leave his rocket launcher at the exact moment the cutscene ends that spawns the two Gatling gun Maginis. I used the audio cue of the bulkhead door fully opening in order to start shooting my rockets. I'm going to play a clip of me doing this real quick. To start this fight out, Shev is going to want to shoot one bullet at Wesker to make sure Wesker can't shoot Chris. As Shev is doing this, Chris is shooting a rocket 3 feet to the left and 3 feet behind where Wesker is. This rocket is going to damage Wesker and cause him to dash forward. After he dashes forward, just run up behind him and wait for him to spin kick once he does shoot him to the ground and inject him. I'm going to explain Sheva's part to killing Wesker first. After this cutscene, turn to the right and run to the corner, and then start aiming your rocket at Wesker. After 2 seconds of Wesker filling his arm around, shoot a rocket behind his right shoulder from your viewpoint, and it'll hit the ground behind him and kill him. There's 2 cutscenes Chris has to skip here. The first cutscene is normal, but during the second cutscene you can actually move Chris still. While the second cutscene's playing, rotate Chris to the right, and once you actually see Chris moving, start running to the right, and then clamber up the rock. After clambering up the rock, turn around and clamber down the rock, and this is when you should be hearing Sheva's rocket kill Wesker.
Ready, partner?
Locked and loaded.
Suck on this, Wesker.
Your time's up, you son of a bitch.
Making a video like this was very new to me when I first started. The whole aspect of voiceovering gameplay actually had me feeling pretty uncomfortable. I didn't really start getting into the swing of things until like midway through the tutorial, and even now at the very end of the tutorial, I'm still not 100% comfortable doing a voiceover like this. I learned a lot from making this video, and I hope you guys learned a lot from watching it, those of you who've made it this far. It was probably like 15 to 20 hours of work I put into this video, and I actually have no regrets of where my time was spent. Any question or comments, feel free to comment on the video, or you can get a hold of me through speedruns.com or my Discord. I'm going to leave my Discord linked down below in the description. I appreciate you guys checking out my video, and good luck on your speedruns.